I have a question about the black sun. And I notice that I connect with the Saturn persona more than anything. The one that's always alone, behind the scenes, doing everything on my own. Learning everything alone. I'm even wearing black pants and a shirt right now. I'm really starting to dislike humans and social interactions. I like animals though. I'm even vegan, but really hate people. I have thoughts of most people as lesser creatures, pathetic, and should be exterminated because I think of so many people as useless. I remember your lesson on the sun and remembered you saying something about the black sun. I think it's happening, and the thing is, a part of me doesn't even care if it happens. Alright, so a lot of people are this way, believe it or not, and it's not other people. It's you, bro. But it's not your fault. Let me say that again. It's you, but it's not your fault. Basically what it comes down to is you have an emotional blockage. And you're projecting those feelings for yourself onto other people. As all people do. People who are happy project those feelings of happiness onto other people, and those who are miserable do the same. And because of polarity, those who are happy generally don't like to be around miserable people, and vice versa. Miserable people can't stand to be around happy people either. Everyone's carrying a charge, an emotional charge. And we always try to pass our charge on to other people. Happy people want others to be happy, and miserable people want others to be miserable. In effect, we all want other people to be more like ourselves by having others resonate with us. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we have to realize is that people are by and large programmed to carry on a certain way. And that subconscious programming will dominate the actions of the people every time. In fact, the difference between a magician and regular people is that the magician reprograms his subconscious. That's essentially what occult magic is. By communicating a set of desired instructions to the subconscious to make internal and external changes in accordance with our will. In fact, making the internal changes causes the greatest external changes. As above, so below, as within, so without. Everything in your environment and the things that are coming in your life are a representation of what's going on inside of you. Those feelings of other people being useless are a reflection of your own repressed feelings for yourself. But because of all of our programming, it's not your fault, okay? If you have an emotional blockage, you can't function properly. You're not functioning as you were designed to function. So what alchemical element corresponds with the emotions? Well, water. And what happens when a water pipe is blocked up? Well, it backs up and goes the other direction, doesn't it? It can't get through. So instead of happiness, joy, fulfillment, you're feeling the opposite because it's going the opposite direction. And everything where the emotional block is stagnating, and that's why you say you don't care that it's happening, because all that water that is at the block is stagnating, and you feel dead inside, and you're at risk of attracting negative entities to you and attaching to you because of that stagnation. Negative entities are like mosquitoes who like to land in and breed in stagnating water, the emotions. Now, if your emotional circuit is flowing correctly, those negative entities will have a tough time holding on. They'll be flushed out, like immediately. You won't be having thoughts of exterminating other people. That's the greatest protection against negative entities, in fact. We talked about combining force and form to do our magic, and we said that force is the emotions. So what do you think the forces of darkness are? In Star Wars, what do you think the dark side of the Force is? It's negative emotions. It's emotional blockage that creates negative emotions. And we've gone over the conscious side of the mind is the logical side, and the subconscious side of the mind is the emotional side of the mind, the feeling side of the mind. The subconscious, that side that connects to the divine, and also the one that those entities will come through. So, in order to remove an emotional block, we have to understand what causes an emotional blockage in the first place. And simply put, it's emotional trauma. And typically the earlier the trauma, the more backed up you are, the more difficult the removal. The more recent that somebody hurts your feelings or pisses you off, you get over it after a little bit. But it still adds to the blockage. And these things build up over time. The biggest two are guilt and shame. And it happens to be what our society is built on. Our society loves to play the blame game. Everyone pointing their fingers at everyone else. It's not my fault, it's your fault. I mean, you can't even have an accident, which by the very definition of the word means it's nobody's fault, without somebody being liable for it. Think about that for a minute. The entire system is built up upon minimizing liability and passing the buck. Nobody wants to be responsible for themselves. They all want to blame an external source, which is the complete opposite of what a magician does. Even when I seemingly had a curse put upon me, I still had to go and look at what I had done, possibly to bring this upon myself. Which is why I did an uncrossing for my own actions, as well as an uncrossing for those who may have done things to me. I also had to look very carefully at any laws of magic that I may have broken, and I will give you the results of that in the Laws of Magic series coming up here on October 29th, and you can subscribe to that right up here. I'll put the link also in the description. The thing is that people always want to find fault with others due to their own imperfect nature. It's guilt, blame, and shame that does the most damage. You take child molesters or child abusers, which are considered the lowest of the low in society in terms of what somebody can do. And they're so quick to point the finger at the child molester and to punish him. I mean, people want to kill him. But they never think of what the hell is going on with society as a whole. They don't think to punish the victim, that child, who has a pretty good chance of becoming the next victimizer because of that emotional trauma and the emotional blockage that's going to be caused from it and the programming that's going to result from it. And that's why a lot of today's victims are tomorrow's victimizers, and it's a cycle. I mean, this guy here is thinking of exterminating people. These are the thoughts that are going through his head. Would you rather punish him and point fingers and say, yes, he's bad, or do you want to fix the problem? The problem is easily fixed if you remove that emotional blockage. And I'm not defending child abuse or anything like that. I'm shedding light on the problem and how to solve it. And the first thing you have to realize is that it's not your fault. It's a result of the programming that went into you. I mean, how can it be? You were programmed as a little child with the values of your parents and other people that have maybe influenced you to think a certain way. You've watched TV your entire life, listened to radio, had subliminal messages pumped into you through movies, entertainment. You've been indoctrinated through an education system to think a certain way. I mean, you've all watched that Bob Proctor video that I went into when I first started this channel, and he talked about the subconscious mind being programmed. Since you were born, it's been constantly programmed. And if you realize this, you could understand how it's not your fault. The subconscious mind will override the conscious actions of the individual each and every time. And it's a big reason of why the scripture tells you not to judge other people, and why the New Testament emphasizes forgiveness. But in order to forgive those other people that may have caused you that emotional trauma, you have to forgive yourself first. It's not your fault, okay? And don't be so concerned with those other people that you're hating on. Be concerned with your own problems that you have right now, which is getting rid of that emotional blockage. Otherwise, nothing's going to change for you. That's why earlier I showed that clip in Good Will Hunting where Sean, played by Robin Williams, was telling Will, played by Matt Damon, that it's not his fault. I mean, here was a guy who was abused by his father, which is obviously not his fault, but yet he carries that burden around with him and had that emotional blockage. And that's exactly what it was. It was an emotional blockage that he was carrying around because he had guilt and shame of those events in his life. You have to let it go because it's not your fault. The one in the movie, Good Will Hunting, was obviously not his fault. But whatever it is that you're carrying around with you and what other people may have done to you and made you feel, it's not your fault, okay? Let it go. And I would post that clip again in this video, but I got a copyright notice for it the last time, and so I'm just going to link to that here. And I want you to watch that over and over and over again, because that's exactly what he had to do. He had to tell Will, Robin Williams' character had to tell him over and over again that it was not his fault until it finally got through to his subconscious and he was able to immediately remove that emotional blockage. And then afterwards, he was happy again. Lo and behold, he could function again without sabotaging his relationships with other people from his bitterness and anger, you know, the dark side of the force. As Yoda would say, feel the force flow through you. He uses the word flow. Water, emotions, it's got to flow. And flow it will once that emotional blockage is removed. I mean, I don't care what's been done to you or through you, and I guarantee you that entities have done things through you if you've had an emotional blockage. You simply can't function properly with an emotional blockage. Not the way that you were intended to function. Not the way that you were designed. So that's my prescription. I mean, I gave you the answer last time, but I didn't thoroughly explain it. Is to watch that clip over and over again And while doing so, imagine that Sean, Robin Williams' character, is speaking to you and all the things that you're holding on to until you let it go like Will does. And you'll know, because you'll feel all that burden and heaviness just simply flow away. And refrain from thinking that you're too tough to cry, because all that is an emotional release. See, we've been programmed, again, that grown men don't cry. That's programming. Again, force, emotions, water, tears, release. So you need to watch that until your results are the same as Will's, Matt Damon's, in that clip. It may take you several times, and this may not be the only instance that you need to do this, because just because it's been unclogged once doesn't mean that it can't get re-clogged again. Everything's an input and an output system, and if you're not allowing the output, the outflow, then things are going to back up and be blocked. So you have to let it all go. Let that stagnant water out, because stagnant water turns mucky and dirty and nasty. So that's why you're feeling that way. So just let it go, man. It's not your fault. And next time we're going to get into how this ties into the religious experience. Because when this is done properly and that emotional blockage is removed, you're going to feel so great that it's going to be impossible for you to hate anybody. So, until then, take care, and I'll see you next time.